Okay, quite the disaster. Somebody could please put a comment in the comment box so I can see if it's working. Oh my God, YouTube, you're killing me. It's a new link. If you have a moment, you can share that link onto various groups so that they know. I don't really have time to go do all that. Okay, it's working. Hi, you're live. Okay, sorry about that. It's this YouTube platform. It just happens sometimes. Am I wearing pants? Absolutely not. Why would I wear pants? I mean, look where I am. Why would I wear pants? Okay, well, unfortunately, there were a lot of people lined up to watch this, and the camera wouldn't work. The camera works fine, but for YouTube, it just lost that connection. I couldn't get it back. So at the last second, I had to open up a new, who's it here? At least the chat's working. Everything's functioning on this one. We lost a bunch of people, but so be it. Let's get to it. I'm already 7 minutes late. If you're new to Coffee Time, sit back, relax. Basically, this is the one day of the week where I sit down and discuss various topics and events, what's going on in my life or with the channel, and it's an opportunity for questions and answers towards the end. As always, if you're going to ask a question, please preface it with 4 question marks and try to hold them towards the end so you don't get lost in the chat, which today may not be a problem. We may not have that many people that can find this channel in time. Okay, it was a busy week for me. It was a very busy week. Today we're going to talk about my busy week, and then we're going to talk about what's going on in Ecuador, the video that I made, and any kind of updates. And you can ask questions about Ecuador during that portion if you want. We can try to make it as conversational as possible. And then the last thing, don't have a ton of things today because it was such a busy week. What's upcoming? What's planned for the next week or so. So this will be a good week for questions. If you have some, make sure that you get them out this week. Monday and Tuesday, I went to Manizales. I left early Monday morning. I left with my friend Linda, assistant. She was basically helped me with a few things, and we went up to interview Mark. Now, I don't know if you saw that interview or not. I thought he did an excellent job, and I thought it had a lot of information. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to watch that. Now, while I was up there with the new camera, when I took a ton of clips, some things that I just had never done when I lived there. And we went out at night, and so I got some high up from his balcony scenic view of the city at night with all the colors. Some of the buildings are lit up with different colors. And then we went out to dinner to an area called Milan, where there's all these high-end upscale restaurants, international type. And we went to an Italian restaurant, and I got pictures, beautiful restaurant going in and how big it was, and the outside, it's, one of these we're fancy. And it was really, really good. And So I got pictures of that. I got all kinds of pictures. And I got back Tuesday night. I put the card in, and there was nothing on it. There was nothing. I got the interview because I took my big camera with the tripod, and I did the interview with that. So I put the card in, and there's nothing. Apparently, somehow it was locked. Now, not locked with a little physical tab, but digitally locked. The problem is anything it had been in doesn't have the ability to do that. So I have no idea what's going on. I didn't lose anything. It's just it recorded, but the card wouldn't accept it. And on the camera, it didn't tell me that the light came on like it was recording. So one more thing to think about. It's unfortunate, but I do have tons of clips over this week for a couple videos coming up. Wednesday, I just edited the video to get it up on time for Wednesday. Thursday, I spent a lot of time actually Wednesday and Thursday preparing the Ecuador video, which we'll talk about here shortly. And I did some shooting and editing and, you know, just the usual. Ate up most of my days and most of my nights. Oh, and I had a problem uploading that Ecuador video. Now, normally that was a long video. It was about 45 minutes. And that'll usually take, well, somewhere up to an hour to upload. Well, it ran for about 12 hours and only got to 57%. I don't know what the problem was. I mean, my internet was fine. It hadn't changed. I checked it. And so I deleted it and I re-uploaded. I thought, well, maybe that's it. Well, 15 hours later, it was uploaded. So actually it went up Thursday, although it was ready and loading prior to that. No, not Thursday. It was up. When did it go up? Saturday? Well, it should have gone up the day before, and it didn't, and that's why. I don't know what's up with YouTube. It's just constant problems. Unfortunately, the only game in town. So Friday, I met with Robert. Robert was here a week or two ago. Gringo from the U.S. He lives in Fort Lauderdale, so he can just hop on a plane and zip down here to Armenia in no time. And he's contemplating moving here in 4 years. And he's very detail oriented, and he wants to know everything there is to possibly know. So what he did this time was, well, we met for one day where we just kind of went over lots of questions that he had. And he keeps a notebook. I brought this up in another video. He keeps a notebook, and he's got endless pages about Armenia in it. And yesterday, he hired a car. I arranged it for him. So we drove around. By the time I got home, it was, let's say, 3, 4, 5 hours in total. And then it was taking him and dropping him off. That included a nice long lunch. And I'll do a video on that. The cost for that, because everybody's asking me, was $120,000 for the car, him driving, gas included, all of that, which amounts to about $35. Now, everybody seems to know because of Facebook, I'm never really comfortable with birthdays. I've never celebrated them in my life. I guess maybe I don't like the attention. I don't know. But it was my birthday yesterday. And so he bought us all lunch, but basically it's kind of, he said, you know, I'm going to buy you lunch for your birthday. And it was very nice. It was amazingly good. It was in Calarcao, right next to Armenia. I mean, literally right next, barely a mile away. And I love beef tongue. And it was the best beef tongue I have had in forever. You know, for me, the 3 top cuts of beef are rib roast, ribeye, and beef tongue, and not in that order. It was so good. Restaurant was so good. And I do have some good video clips of that. I'm going to do a clip or a video this coming week in a couple different restaurants that I went to last week that I think you might find interesting. At least the people that are constantly asking me about do more restaurants. William was the driver, and it turns out I have a friend here, the family, the entire family, Javier and his family. And I asked him if he knew somebody could drive around. I'm thinking, well, maybe they could even do it, but they were busy. He says, yeah, I actually know somebody. So he made the arrangement. And it turned out his name is William. And he's, I may have this wrong, but he's in the police. He's in the national police. And he's high up there on the food chain. It's a very skilled position, and it's something, as I recall, like homicide investigator. I may not have that exactly right, but it was in the ballpark. So very nice guy. He took us to see his family that just moved down from Bogota a month ago. They've got themselves a little chicken operation. It was very cool, and very nice people. Good person to know. I mean, who doesn't want to know, a high-ranking cop in the national police? So that was real plus. And we drove all over Armenia. Robert wanted to see the good, bad, and the ugly. He wanted us to go into neighborhoods that you shouldn't go, don't go. So we went everywhere from Stratus 1 to 6. And almost all of them I'd actually been to one time or another. They were all fairly familiar. And I knew enough about the city to make recommendations of what Robert was looking for. And of course, the driver knew exactly what we were talking about, where to go, because, he's not originally from here. He's from Bogota, but he obviously knows the city. So we had a good time just driving around and checking things out. We saw nature. We got to the outskirts of Armenia and looked around in the countryside. Robert's cousin is kind of he likes more secluded farm thing, and he's interested in possibly moving here. So it was a good fact-finding thing. It was actually a lot of fun. I did got my birthday lunch. It was pretty amazing. And by the way, I have to say, I got so many messages on it. I was kind of blown away. So thank you for all the good wishes and the nice comments. And many of you wish me to live a long life, which was very nice, because, a lot of times I get these trolls that die, you MFer, So getting messages about, it's like, it would be nice to see you live long and prosper. That was pretty nice. Ecuador had again. I got some contributions based on the birthday. So, the channel thanks you as well. The whole thing felt very awkward for me. My first year of doing these videos, well, actually to this day, I still feel awkward doing these videos. I'm not comfortable with it. But my first year was really painful. For a while, I even tried to hide behind these dark sunglasses. It's like, kind of like that. Some of you watch those early videos will know. Speaking of early videos, and it goes to this Ecuador thing, I mean, it's really annoying when people say I told you so, but honestly, if you go back almost 4 years, I talked about Ecuador's economy. I talked about the retirement issue and the healthcare system and subsidies and the loans. I talked quite a bit about the loans that were being taken out and where that was going to lead. So I'm not going to say I told you so, but if you go back and what's my point here? Is it to brag? No, my point is, yeah, I'm jumping a little bit to Ecuador. My point is that I'm seeing time and again that this was a surprise. And the reason that there's all these protests is because it was such a shock. It was such a surprise. Then why did I know this 3 or 4 years ago that eventually this was going to come? It's not that I'm some genius with a crystal ball. It's because it was freaking obvious. All you had to do is pay attention to the news, see what was going on, pay attention to the loans that kept coming up. make a few visits to a few things, which I did a lot of because I was doing videos. And so I do a video about an area, but at the same time, personally, I'm looking and talking to people about issues in the country. Because I knew before I ever went to Ecuador that, you know, it's notorious for its issues of stability. And so it was always a concern. I always wanted to know. So to those people who keep saying that this was a surprise, it was all about the gas subsidy and it was sprung overnight. It wasn't sprung overnight. Actually, he's been talking about it for the past year, that it wasn't sustainable. So there's just so much misinformation. It's maddening to go on Facebook and you have all these people that chime in with information who obviously don't know what they're talking about. So don't get your news from Facebook. Don't get it from me. Get it from direct sources. Right now, there's a video up that's showing it's sympathy for the protesters thing because it's a coup that's going on. So you've got people that are laying down and nurses taking care of them on this video, and they show bullet wounds, how the government is committing atrocities and crimes. But the thing is, I looked at this one bullet wound that's in the calf of a man's leg. I don't know if people watching, I don't know how much familiarity people have with war or bullet wounds or, you know, matters like that. I have some firsthand experience with that. And I'm looking at this wound on his leg, and it looks like it was a 22 caliber, and I don't mean a 222. I mean a 22 caliber, and it did no damage to the tissue. It didn't blow out the other side. This was not a police or military weapon that shot this guy. It's obvious. You don't need to speak Spanish or have any narrate. You can look at that and see it's something else. You know, there's a lot of propaganda going on, and it's difficult to know which is which. If I didn't have some experience with bullet wounds, maybe I wouldn't have recognized that. Maybe I wouldn't have seen it as fake because it's fake, not necessarily the wound. I don't know, but you know, that video is not real. You can see that it's not real. If he were shot with a police or military weapon, it would have been a completely different round, and that wound would have not been some little pinpoint. It would have been quite obvious. So, you know, be careful what you're watching and be careful what you're retweeting, and you know, the bad information. You don't want to be a purveyor. You know, just keep propagating this stuff. It's not doing any good. Ecuador is being destroyed right now. It seemed I'd hoped it would get better by now, and it's not, because there's so much outside influence going on. It's destroying the economy, which was already in the toilet. It was already a serious problem. There's export items that are just you know, rotting on the piers. Basically, it's just a horrible situation. The Ecuador video actually. The watch time is up 255% over the average. People are spending a lot of time watching that video, and I didn't just pull things out of the air when I put that together. And some of my opinions or bias come out. Of course, I pronounce that in the video that, you know, it's facts with my opinions. Because it kind of has to be. If you're going to tell the story, you have to have some opinion in there. But the facts were the facts. I didn't make those up. I got 3 negative comments that were kind of nonsensical, and it basically was just pro-socialist, and there was no actual argument in there. It's I deleted one because it was pretty offensive. I left the other couple. I got a lot of very positive comments on it. Some people, there were actually a couple people that really, I know who they are, and they know firsthand a lot of what goes on. One's actually associated with the government while not in the government directly. And, you know, and they verified a lot of things that I was saying. So that was nice. The repeated argument about the effect on the poor is, it's honestly a sympathy claim being used. Will it affect the poor? Yes, it's going to affect the poor. It's not going to affect the poor in that they're going to die or they're going to starve to death. It will have some minor effect on the poor. And the gasoline subsidy, and I'm not going to repeat everything that was in there, but it's not the only subsidy, and there's other subsidies that are being kept alive, including the bus transportation subsidy. So there's a lot of things that were designed to help the poor that doesn't exist in other countries that will remain there. But, you know, I just go back to my bottom line in that video. How do you keep paying for a subsidy when there's no money to pay for it? I mean, if the subsidy isn't ended, it's going to end anyway, because you can't keep bankrupting everything else. I mean, the IESS, it's $4 billion in debt every year. Where does the money come from to shore that up? Which would you prefer, a gas subsidy or healthcare? Or, you know, it's a mess. The problem isn't what's occurring now. The problem is all the things that got it to this point. And so there are no great, perfect solutions. There aren't any. But something has to be done. You've got a country that was on the verge of bankruptcy, but now you have a country that's in the midst of a coup on top of that. Foreign investment was coming back to Ecuador. It was coming back strong. And if you look and see the bonds that were sold recently, they're just plummeting. The value of Ecuador and doing business in Ecuador is vanishing. This is not good. This is not good for the poor. All of these things that are occurring are going to devastate the poor because they're going to devastate everybody. So, you know, just please, if you're a foreigner, if you're from North America or anywhere in the world, unless you really know what you're talking about, you might want to kind of back off, because I see so many people that are shoring up arguments that are actually the destruction of Ecuador. There was one example. There was a post put up on Facebook that I read this morning, and it's talking to an indigenous leader then marching into Guayaquil, and they're asking him, you know, what's going on, what's your viewpoint? And it was pretty long. I'm not going to go through all the detail. You can find it yourself on the Ecuador Expats Facebook page. What it amounted to, and the person that posted it was like, yeah. What it amounted to was, he feels that the president has sold out his country, and so he was marching in they want to eliminate the president, and they want to eliminate the assembly. In other words, the government. They want to take down the government. The election's a year away, a little more than a year away. I mean, are you a democratic republic or are you anarchy? There's other ways to address this. So what they're doing is they're destroying property and businesses and infrastructure that people rely on, depend on. They're blocking roads so food can't get through, medicines can't get through. All of this because they personally want access to power. And they're willing to destroy the government. It doesn't matter who they hurt. And you've got somebody posting this up. I mean, the guy just said it. If you just read what he said, his goal in the group that he's marching with is to tear down the government and destroy things along the way. I'm sorry, I can't be a fan of it. I think there's a place for revolution, but this is hardly a place for revolution. This is actually a time when a country should kind of band together, recognize the reality of what's going on, and together figure out ways to solve this financial crisis, not compound it or make lives miserable. How many people were thinking about moving to Ecuador and spending money and investing money that now are afraid to go? It's hurting Ecuador in countless ways. And you have people on the sidelines that know nothing about it going rah, rah, rah. You also saw I posted up on Adventures in Grand Colombia. I put a lot of information there. If you're not on that page, you might want to try to subscribe or join it. The building in Cuenca, or in Quito, that was fired is actually the building where the corruption investigations and all the paperwork and pending court cases and all that information is in that building, and they burnt that building. It's not to the ground, but it's basically gutted. Now, I understand that there's a lot of backup, but yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be one-off evidentiary information. It's why did they target that building? Why did they go after the building that is after the people that are behind these protests? I mean, it doesn't take. It's more than breadcrumbs. You've got big road signs pointing to what's going on here. So if you're in Ecuador, I wouldn't panic. I don't know that I would move out, but I would certainly keep my ear to the ground. And as one person said, you always want to have a go bag or a backup plan. I don't think it'll be a situation where people are going to be in actual danger as long as you're not getting involved in these things. If you're not registered with the U.S. Embassy, you might want to do that. You can always contact them, and if there's ever a situation, they know where you are, and they will actually come to extricate you. If they know where you are, they'll check up on you. It's their job, and I've seen it firsthand in other countries where there's been issues in some of my travels, and they're pretty good at that. That don't leave a man behind kind of thing. They'll try to look out for you if they have the information. And going forward, if everything smooths out and Ecuador is, fine, or any country that you're living in, here in Colombia, it's always a good idea to register your whereabouts, unless you're in hiding for some reason, with the U.S. Embassy. If you're from the United States, if you're Canadian, et cetera, et cetera. My audience is 70% U.S., so that's what I tend to speak to. It's a pretty good precaution. I actually did it here in Colombia just because I had to be up there to get a new passport. I didn't do it in Ecuador. I know that's one of those things you should do. It's kind of like I never wore seatbelts knowing that you should wear seatbelts. So don't do as I say, or don't do as I do as I say, right? What else we have here? If you have questions on Ecuador now, please, 4 question marks, and then the question. I'll answer those. And then if we don't have any, or when we finish those, I will get to the rest of what we're going to cover today. Essentially, in a nutshell, what you have going on in Ecuador is you've got issue with the economy versus issue about power. One side, the government that's there, Moreno, he's trying to fix the economy, and you've got the other side that's trying to take advantage of that and overthrow the government and get power back. I had somebody tell me, I put a comment. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook anymore because it can be frustrating, but somebody said something about Moreno, and just because his name is Lenin, he's actually a capitalist, and actually he's not, and he's of the same political party until they had a split as Correa, and he is a lifelong socialist. He believes in socialism. It's just that when he saw the corruption that had taken place and he saw the damage that had done to Ecuador, his ideals for socialism weren't as strong as his ideals for his own country. These things are kind of self-evident. So, I mean, I don't know in the man's heart. I've never spoken to the man, but you can see a lot by actions. And his actions have all been to try to fix the problems. So I don't even see him, at least in this mode, as political. For him, it doesn't seem to be socialism. It's not capitalism. I mentioned in the video that it's pragmatism. He's just trying to figure out ways to save Ecuador from economic collapse. On the other hand, you've got just a sheer desire for power and control. That's, we've always seen that. So what do we have here? Well, I've got an opinion there. I don't know to speak to it. Downfall began when they began to be weak on immigration. Actually, if you talk about the downfall is economic, and that began before the open border experiment, which didn't last very long. Even Korea actually ended that. They opened it up to Cuba, and all the Cubans, well, I shouldn't say all, but many of the Cubans that came into Ecuador on this open door policy were actually criminals, and crime spiked, and there was all kinds of problems. And it wasn't much more than a year later than that whole program was shut down. As far as the Venezuelans go in the open border, that's going on everywhere, and it's a legitimate disaster. They're legitimate refugees, and it's what countries do. You take people in that have legitimate claims. If you're from the United States, you would get the impression that the current government is shutting down, refugees, doesn't want them in, and it's racial and all this. Well, the truth is they're taking in tons of refugees. It's just a matter of, are they legitimate refugees? When you're in a place like this where you're a border or two borders or three borders away from where it's happening, that everybody's coming out of Venezuela the reason they're coming out, because it's happened countrywide. It's definitely an issue. Now, you may have criminals in there. You're going to get a percentage of criminals in any population. U.S., Colombia, Venezuelan, Ecuador, doesn't matter. You got criminals. And any kind of migration is going to contain the same percentage of those kind of unsavory people. So yeah, that's definitely had pressure on Ecuador. It's been a big problem. It's a much greater problem here in Colombia. They seem to be managing it, but it's rough. It's an area that at some point there will be a breaking point. This country's not going to go up in flames like we're seeing there, but they've taken well over 1 million people in a country that's barely 50 million people. That's a huge amount of people over a very short period of time to try to absorb. And it creates some problems. It creates issues, and it's happened in Peru, in Chile, Brazil, everywhere. That's the nature of those kinds of issues, and that's the danger of a government that is going to be like that with the people. And in Ecuador right now is fighting for survival, trying to get away from that kind of future. I wish them luck. I'm not living in Ecuador, and I have my issues with Ecuador, but I really enjoyed my life there. I've lived there for 3 years. I had many good friends. All my friends, with only a couple exceptions, were all Ecuadorian or Venezuelan or Colombian. Uh, I travel a lot. There's beautiful aspects of the country. There's many things that I liked about it. I plan on going back and visiting. But I don't know. It comes with its issues, and if you're going to move there, you need to face them realistically and don't make excuses for them. They are what they are. It doesn't mean you're slamming the country. I get accused of, well, you slammed Ecuador because you said this. No, it's not about slamming Ecuador. It's just being realistic. It's when I talked about the economy, I got a lot of heat over it 3 years ago or so. I did a video on that. Got a lot of heat. Well, if you don't like it, go home. And this is all from gringos, not from locals. The locals will watch this. So yeah. Uh, it's it's just facing reality. You're better equipped to make decisions if you face reality. All right, what do we got? Uh, I don't know. They're just weird comments. Colombian thieves are living in Ecuador are mad at Venezuelans because yeah, Colombian thieves. Yeah, okay. So we're not biased or anything. Colombian thieves. Like there's no Ecuador thieves. There's no. Never been to Detroit. I mean, come on. Just go away. Stop watching. Um, it's crap like that you see all over Facebook. These anonymous slams that have no basis and no reality. They're just kind of warped opinion. Yeah, I'm talking about you. It just makes no sense. You shouldn't be publish. Even if you carry these weird opinions, you shouldn't be posting them publicly, um, because it's just like, I don't know. It's like taking a bag of garbage into somebody's wedding and putting it up on the table that they're going to eat at. What was the point of that? What purpose did it serve? Garbage is garbage. So, um, any questions on Ecuador? I don't see any. So we'll continue. See if we can get to the end here. What's coming up? What's coming up on this channel? Well, I did do tons of video clips despite the issues that I had. And plus, I've got some clips sent to me. There's some interesting clips where here in Colombia, there's an active volcano, and a couple people, Mark and Marcelo, drove up there, and they were up at the top, and there's a lake and all kinds of interesting things. To some, others might find it boring. Part of it looks kind of like a moonscape, but I'm probably going to include some of those clips. Occasionally, I get clips from others. If you have any kind of good clips, feel free to send them to me. If they can fit in somewhere, I certainly be happy to use them. If you want credit for it, I can certainly put your name on there. As I mentioned, I went to two amazing restaurants, plus the restaurant in Manizales, so three in total. Two right here in Armenia. Uh, Neither one I'd ever been to before, and I was just kind of blown away. So if the two here in Armenia, I'm definitely going to do a video about those two restaurants, and I will probably include the few things that I have that I managed to keep in Manizales. Unfortunately, lost all the good stuff. And I'll probably put up a video on restaurants Wednesday. Later in the week, I'm most likely going to do an Ecuador update. It won't be real long. It's not going to be 45 minutes like the last one, because I was trying to answer a lot of questions I was getting about where did this come from, what caused it, is there anything other than the gasoline. So I tried to answer all of that. But there are some things that I think it would make sense for me to just do updates on. So later this week, or if there's any kind of big thing that happens or any particular good questions that come along, I'll probably do 1 or 2 updates on it. I know for many people, this is really critical. Many of you live in Ecuador. There's many that are thinking about going to Ecuador. Myself, I was actually planning on going back for Christmas to visit some friends. So, of course, I'm interested in what's going on. I do have a question here. I'll get to it in just a second. So, I'm probably going to take a look at it. If you're not aware, there have been shootings. It's a question as to what. I believe, personally, I think the government is probably justified. Up on the top of some buildings in Quito, they've got snipers, and you've got people burning buildings down. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound bloodthirsty, but it seems to me if somebody's going to burn a building down when there's actually a curfew or martial law right now, don't be surprised if you get shot. Hear the music? There's a big celebration this weekend. Lots of roads are closed here. It's the 130th year of Armenia. And yesterday, I didn't go out. I was dog tired after I guess the whole week, not just yesterday. So I just came home and just, But it would have been a great time to go out, even with a camera. The streets are blocked off for 2 miles. Going down Bolivar and some of the side streets, all kinds of music going on and drinking and street carts and just this huge party all over the city. And I believe it continues today. So after this video, I'm actually going to get ready and go out and see if maybe there's still some alive. But I don't know if you can hear that music. I don't know how you couldn't, but it may be starting up yet more party today. All right, what do we got? Okay, some weeks ago, I mentioned about talking to an agency to see if I could actually get permission to do a video about the process. What happened to it is the agency would never respond. I had a local person contact them as though they were going to, this was not Sura, the one that I talk about. This was an independent agency that sells different companies. And the local person who I asked to contact them, acting like they want to buy something, they got one response basically saying where their address was and then never responded again afterwards. So, I would say it's kind of a lousy agency. I will try to get to that topic again. It's just there's so much going on right now. So many things that I need to do that it's kind of taken a back seat. I have put out some pretty good information on it. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Are there English-speaking doctors in Armenia? Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know any, but I'm sure that there are. I mentioned this in the past. It isn't really that critical to absolutely have everything that you deal with speaking English. You say, well, everything's not my health, that could be my life. Sure, I understand that. But it's easy enough if it were a serious issue like that and you need to make sure there's no misunderstandings. I like that song in the background. Take a translator. It's not like it's very expensive. You spend $10 and you bring somebody that can translate for you. There's translators everywhere. I wouldn't get hung up on that. For example, am I going to decide not to move to Cuenca or Armenia or Medellin or Costa Rica or whatever because they don't have a doctor that speaks English? It's not really necessary. It really isn't. If you really need to have specific conversation, then use a translator. Okay. Things get worse in Ecuador. Can Ecuadorians go to Colombia? I'm sure Colombia has a track record of taking people in that actually need it. On the other hand, they're extremely strict about don't jump their borders. Oh my God. Look at my series of 5 videos of my life on the run. It's a scary thing. They're tough. They don't screw around. But if it's legitimate, yeah, they'll open their doors. They will. Let's hope it doesn't ever get to that. Viva Lenin Moreno. You know, when the election came around and Lenin Moreno was running for president, I was a little freaked out over it because he is a lifelong socialist, and they had already gone so heavily down the road of socialism. Although with the people, capitalism is alive and well. Ecuador actually survives by people having their own little businesses. But, the government gets, deeper and deeper in, and as we see with this crisis and all the debts and everything I covered. So I was pretty freaked out. I'm living in Ecuador, and they're going to elect yet another president that's socialist. Then there's no turning back. There's no middle ground. That's what I thought. But when the guy came in, I was so pleasantly surprised. He came in as a socialist and just started working for Ecuador. So to this point, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's still a socialist. I'm sure he wishes that he could pursue that ideal. But right now, I actually kind of view him as apolitical. He's not being a capitalist. He's not being a socialist. He's being a human being that cares about his country, and he's doing everything he can to solve problems. I don't know, I don't know how people can not see that, but there's a lot of people that aren't recognizing that. And I have no axe to grind either way. And if there's anything, I mean, anybody that knows anything about me, I hate everything there is about socialism. And so, for me to say nice things about him, it's because, from my view, they're real. Yeah, I think if he was a capitalist, things would be much better. But that's neither here nor there. I think politics can get in the way of the right thing, regardless of which side you're on. I think the Ecuadorians would be better or rather stay in their country to fight for their own country. Well, let's hope it doesn't get to the point where it's a matter of fighting. I think right now, honestly, it's all propaganda. I think it's a propaganda battle. There's so many people, and I can say this because I knew so many people in Ecuador that are uneducated about what goes on in their own country on the political end. And you could probably say this about many places, even the US. They're living their life. They're busy with their life. They're going to work. They're going to school. They're trying to pay their rent. And the politics, it's like another world. It's those people out there. The only thing is they have to live and die with it. Well, let's hope figuratively, not literally. But the best thing that could happen is if somehow they could override the drumbeat that's going on about, it's all about the indigenous and income inequality and blah, 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 and somehow educate them as to the facts of here's where we are. This is what we have. And if you want that, that's great. But how are we going to pay for it? What's your answer to that? I think if the cards are just kind of laid on a table. Now, I know Moreno has given some speeches and people really didn't pay attention to it. And I know he's talked about these things along the way. He's talked about the gasoline and the LP tank subsidy, and he's talked about all of these things that it's not sustainable. But people aren't believing it because on the other side, you got, well, he's just selling out. He's just, he's becoming a capitalist and he's trying to sell Ecuador to the highest bidder and blah blah blah. And there's no basis in that, but people just love to say it. So I don't know. Stay and fight. Well, if it's your country, yeah, but how do you fight? It's right now. It's a battle of propaganda, and it's teetering on where it's going to go, and it's some of it's play acting. And I'm telling you, my personal opinion of those gunshot victims, seeing that gunshot didn't come from a sniper up on 15 floors with an AK-47 or an AR-15. It came from like a little 22 pistol. So, I don't know who creates those things. All right, we got anything else? Last call for questions. Can you hear that music? I don't know. It's pretty loud for me. I don't know if you can hear it or not. Okay, I don't see any more questions. So, I guess we'll kind of get on with things, and I'll get ready to go out and see if this party is still happening out in town. Maybe if it is, I'll get some video and show you what a good time people have here in Armenia, Colombia. To all those in Ecuador, my hat's off to you. Hang in there. Take care. Be safe. Don't contribute to the noise. And I'll see you next Sunday.